Hey there. Today I'm going to talk about a type of pen that I was sure I would never talk to you about, because it is a vintage pen. For those of you not familiar with the term, that is like a classic pen that has usually been pre-owned and that you buy at some point. Like let's call it an antique, like an antique cupboard. Well, these are older pens, and the specific pen I'm talking about is from the 1960s, so it is not as old as some are, but let's just refer to it as a vintage pen anyway. I think it is no longer produced, so that's kind of interesting, and I'm talking about the Montblanc 220. This is the box. I'll go through that in a second, but let me explain to you how I got this pen. I collect fountain pens that are made right now, modern pens, and I use them to write with, which is what pens are made for. So some people really collect vintage pens. To me, that does not hold much appeal. Now clearly it's fine if it does to you and you like that, but for me pens are really practical, and I'm not sure about buying older pens. I would always be afraid that they leak or whatever. But this time I did buy an old pen. Why? Well, I wanted to add a Montblanc pen to my collection because I think it's a famous brand. It's an older brand. I thought it would be nice to own a Montblanc pen, but they are very expensive generally. Now, I was at a pen show here in the Netherlands, and I happened to see this Montblanc pen, and I thought, well, why not, in fact. So I got it at a very decent price. It is nothing spectacular, I think, but it is a nice pen. So let's go through it. It actually came in this cardboard box. I can't imagine this is original, since the pen's from the 1960s, but whatever. A cardboard box. You open the box, and out comes this thing, which looks like something people put their glasses in, but in this case it's really made for pens. Now it has this very nice, you can probably see this, smooth, velvety like thing going on here in a brown color. It looks a bit like leather or something. I'm not exactly sure what kind of material it is, but it looks cool. I really think it does, and it's nice to the touch. Here is the famous Montblanc logo, and this is the back side, which looks kind of comparable to this, except that it is completely flat. Now it opens up with this little mechanism, which those of you who wear glasses may actually know, because there are some of these containers you put your glasses in actually have that lock. So that's it makes things even more spectacle-like. When it opens up, you see this. So this is, again, the covering is that same soft material. There is the Montblanc booklet. Now, I think most of you who use pens know this kind of thing, right? It just details, it gives you a guarantee. I can't imagine I still have a guarantee because it's a pen from the 60s, and I'm not the first owner, but whatever. It tells you how to fill pens and what different pen types there are, and it also tells you the same in Chinese, which is useful if you can read and speak Chinese, which I can't. Then there is the pen, which I take out with respect because it is an old pen. It's much older than I am. So let's have a look at it. For starters, I really like it. This is the Montblanc 220, which, if I understand correctly, is a pen from the 60s, and all of this information I give you is second-hand. It's what I could find on the internet. Let's just discuss the pen from top to bottom. I will tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and then I'll show you some writing. So the very tip has the Montblanc logo, which I think is very cool. I think that's a very nice, simple yet very effective logo. The same logo is at the bottom of the pen, the end cap. The material of the body and the cap, if I understand correctly, is plastic, but it doesn't feel plasticky at all. Here I have one of these. No, sorry, that's not what I meant. To show you, sorry about that. This is one of those pens you get with specific noodlers inks. I like this pen a lot. Apparently it doesn't have a nib right now. I like the nib, which is not there because it is here. This is so chaotic. This is the nib. I like this pen, but this really feels like plastic, because it is. It's plastic and it feels plasticky. Not necessarily anything wrong with it. It feels a bit cheap. But this pen, that's completely different. This feels distinguished. It's not entirely smooth. This is smooth. This is the barrel of a Waterman hemisphere. This is metal, but this is highly smooth. This is a bit textured. I don't know if you've ever used charcoal to draw with. It's something I used to do in primary school. That's what this feels like. A very slight textured structure. It's very nice, sort of these very, very thin lines running along in this direction, which makes it very nice to touch and hold, actually. So the cap, the end, this is the clip. It's just a regular clip, which is pretty strong, has a lot of spring to it, so it will really stay in your shirt pocket if you put it in there. It's got this gold ring, and that says Montblanc on this side, and on the other side it says 220, which is the name of the specific type of the pen. Now, this is a vintage pen, and as I told you, this is my first vintage pen. There's another first for me in this, and that is that the nib is oblique broad. So far I've only owned regular fountain pen nibs, so the standard round version. This is oblique, which means that you probably can't see this. I don't think there's any way my webcam is going to pick this up, but the nib is actually slanted like this. So it's not straight as a normal nibs, or rounded a little bit. No, it's really oblique, like that. So that means you will get a specific type of line variation. I'll show you that in a minute as I give the writing demonstration. For now, let's just look at the nib. I think it's pretty cool. It is integrated in the feed section. So it doesn't stick out as with most pens, but it's really in there, almost like a Waterman Carène. They have that too. So that's kind of nice. I also like this sort of pointy thing going on, which looks a bit, the black plastic looks a bit like two mountains, which I think is very, very cool. I think it's a very nice design. What you may notice is that this pen, the nib, does not have a breather hole. There is no hole. There is a slit, but there is no hole. There is a hole on the other side. Now, I'm going to display my lack of knowledge here. Is that a breather hole? I'm not sure. Anyone who does, put a comment below there. It could be that this hole is just meant to suck up the ink, because this is a piston filler. It could also be that it somehow connects to the feed and functions as a breather hole. I really don't know, I'm sorry. So let's just pass by this apparent lack of knowledge of mine and go back to the nib. The nib says 585, which means it is 14 karat gold. It's a very, very smooth nib. Really. I really like it. It's smooth, it has a nice amount of flex to it, not too much, not too little, just a great amount, and again, it's super smooth. Now, this is an oblique nib, it's broad. Broad means you just get a broad line, clearly, but the oblique part is something I had to train with. It's a different way of writing than with a normal nib, so perhaps you will notice that as I give my writing example later on, I'm not as efficient in writing as I usually am. It really gets some, it needs some getting used to. It needs some getting used to it, yes. But it's nice. I really like it, and I like the way it's integrated in this section. So the final part, you can see that here, this is very smooth plastic. This part where I grip it, I hold my pen a bit high, has the same nice texture the entire body has. So that looks very unitary, but it also makes it great to hold. this is really not too slippery. You can really have a nice grip without the section being particularly tapered or what have you. So that's very nice. Here you see the little mechanism that holds the cap in place, nothing spectacular there. And finally, what I do want to mention is that this part rotates. If you look very carefully, I'll try to twist it around in the light a little bit, you may see a very fine line at this level. See that? There's a very fine line right there. So you twist this, and as you do that, a plunger will move back in the pen. That's the piston. So let's call the piston to avoid confusion. The piston moves back, you put it in a bottle of ink, you twist it the other way around, and then the plunger will draw up again and will suck up ink into the pen, allowing you to write with it. Now, this pen holds an extremely decent amount of ink. I just took it with me to a conference, and I wrote, I think, about 20 or 22 A5 pages, really from top to bottom, and there's still ink in there without refilling it. So once this is inked up, it'll give you a lot of opportunity to write, and you can write with it for a very long time. So there you have it, the Montblanc 220, my first, probably last vintage pen. I like it a lot. Actually, there is nothing about it I don't like. It's a very cool pen. It's very light. I prefer heavier pens, so to me, for me it could have been a little heavier, but the weight doesn't weigh up to the niceties of the pen. One thing I would like to point out is that currently I have the feeling that although this is oblique, it has been rounded off a little bit. Of course, this is a pen from the 60s. It has been used by someone before me, maybe multiple people before me, I'm not sure. So I got the feeling the angle of the nib is not as sharp as it would have been if I'd gotten this completely new. But then again, it's no longer produced, so there's no way to get this straight from the factory. It still is nice, and I love it dearly. Very good pen. So now I will show you how it writes, and that's it. So I'll see you later. So writing with the Montblanc 220. This is a vintage pen with an oblique broad nib, which means that you will get a very specific line variation. As you can see, the lines that go up or down in a diagonal, like this, are much narrower than strokes that go down like this. And that is not a matter of pressure. It is, it has to do with the shape of the nib, which you probably cannot see very well, but it is slanted. It is oblique, after all. So under specific circumstances, that can give you a very unique way of writing. Now, I'm not familiar with oblique pens. This is my first, so I have to experiment a little bit with that. But what you can probably see is that there's a difference between these fine and the broader lines, depending on the angle of the nib. So that's kind of nice. Furthermore, this nib is smooth. It really gives very little resistance. And it flows very well. When it comes to flex, well, of course, there's being an oblique nib, you will get some line variation anyway, but with pressure, you can get out quite a bit of flex. It is a smooth nib, it is gold, and I really like it, considering this is a let's say second-hand pen, right? It is vintage, it has been owned by someone else before me who had a specific way of writing. It adapted very well to my hand, and I really think this oblique thing is pretty cool. Now, for some of you, it will not be new, because they have oblique nibs, but this is my first, so I'm really still surprised by the amount of line variation that can be created with this, which is kind of nice. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.